Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I got Dryden Gold on the horn today, and they've got an orogenic gold project, and I'm a big fan of orogenic gold systems because they have high grade gold in them, and they can be spectacular mines, such as the one at Fosterville. That was really a company maker for Kirkland Lake Gold that ultimately led to them getting taken over for about 14 billion. And it was also a company maker for Gold Corp in the Red Lake mine. And Dryden, Ontario is not very far from Red Lake, Ontario has the same kind of aged rocks that are required for orogenic systems, a similar structural story, and most importantly, very high grade gold. So I'm happy to have Trey Wasser and Maura Kolb on today to talk about it all. Hi, guys.
Hi, thanks for
Hey,
having us,
Alan,
Alan.
thanks for having us.
So I spent a lot of my career in diamond exploration, and I was just explaining yesterday how in diamond exploration you use the breadcrumbs of indicator minerals to lead you to where the diamond bearing kimberlite that hosts the diamonds is located. And it's a process of using science to lead you to those. And because I had spent so much of my career, I mentioned to a good geologist friend of mine that I look at everything like a diamond exploration project. And how that applies to orogenic gold systems is that the breadcrumbs are the age of the rocks. You need these greenstone belts that are very old rocks. And they are the way the gold bearing fluids make their way up to the surface is through deep cracks in the earth, and then secondary cracks when the gold bearing fluids get closer to the surface. I also have mentioned in the past how you can use alteration when metals bearing fluids hit the country rock. They have a way of leaving big footprints, and that is important at the surface as well as in the drill core. When you're getting close to a vein, you will often see alteration right beside it that tells you you're getting close to a vein with gold in it. Then the most important part is I watch for the distribution of visible gold in the system. And why I've been so excited about the Dryden area for some time now, a few years, is that historically there was a massive hole hit on your ground by a former operator that had visible gold that reminded me of the samples that I used to see at the PDAC from Gold Corp. And this literally looked like half gold, half quartz. And that intersection that was historically drilled on your property had the same looking core. So that's what initially got me interested in the Dryden area. And then you came out yesterday with a drill core of visible gold that got me pretty pumped up. So that's making a short story long. That's the nature of why we're talking today. And Maura is showing that particular core. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, pretty exciting. So this is a follow-up on the Elora uh, vein system that we have on our property. So I'll remind you quickly that there's three different vein systems, and we drill tested all three in the first campaign. The four phases was really to expand and to understand the high grade controls, and then start to test our theories on high grade by testing some new shoots. So this area has only been drilled recently by us previously it was drilled in the 80s and 90s. So we were very excited to get kind of our first boots on the ground. And that awesome hit we had in phase 4 was 14 grams over 7.5 meters. Now this hole is about 50 meters down plunge from it. And we've intercepted lots of visible gold here in these nice little streaks. So pretty exciting to have that be our first hole. We got starting to cut this today, and man, what a good start to a program.
Maura, something else interested me. And again, it gets back to my following the breadcrumbs of diamonds to lead me to diamond deposits and coarse gold to lead me to orogenic gold discoveries. What I saw in that core is thin little veinlets, but the one that had the visible gold in it, it was like that quartz vein was just loaded up with
Just gold.
coarse visible gold. And so my question is two-part. One is, what does that all mean? And secondly, do you think that you've only maybe are on the edge of something and need to vector into the primary quartz vein?
What we're seeing in Alora is a little bit different than what the other sample that you talked about. So the other sample is in the big master system, which is very clearly one vein structure with halo mineralization on either side. When we go to this parallel structure, the Alora structure, it actually is more sulfide mineralization with a mix of these butinaged or like these kind of irregular quartz veins mixed through it. And to me, when you start to see different styles of mineralization all close together, because these veins are not even a kilometer apart, you're starting to show you have a really robust system. I worked in Red Lake a long time. I spent 8 years in that camp. So I'll compare to that because it's quite similar. There you have that style of vein mineralization. You have the same style we just showed with the Alora core, where it's sulfides mixed with small veinlets. And then they also have a just sulfide mineralization ore. So we're starting to see that we have multiple different styles of mineralization, which to me shows a more robust system. Now, are we vectoring into something close? When you see gold, like basically by itself in the rock, like you do in this example here, where it's a veinlet itself of gold. Sorry, it's hard to point and look in the
Yeah,
camera.
it's a quartz vein that's almost all quartz or almost all
Almost
gold.
all gold. Yeah, so that shows me it's a really robust system. We saw that a lot in Red Lake, and you typically will see more fine grained disseminated gold in other lower grade systems. So to me, it's another indicator that we're in a really high grade potential camp. And so what we're working on besides the drill campaign that's going on, we're doing a structural interpretation of gold rock.
Actually, before you get into that,
Yeah.
let me ask you about your experience at Red Lake. When you saw these veinlets, was it distal to the something else, or was that the what hosted the gold veinlets of high grade gold?
Certain zones would be completely hosted in those little veinlets. A lot of them are related to like different competency of rocks. So they would be near contacts. So we may be dealing with that. And that's actually something we've started to see a relationship between the mafic volcanics and a felsic dike coming in. And we've actually seen that in all three of the zones that we're seeing these dikes interacting, and they may be late, but they're using the same vector, or sorry, the same plumbing system. And that kind of gives that competency contrast. We're also starting to notice different layers of volcanic rocks that will act differently and behave differently. We see out on
Let me
the
start
outcrop, we see
geography.
pillows.
Yeah.
Oh, am I choppy? Sorry.
Oh,
We've
sorry.
seen different layers of rocks, which starts to give you those hosts.
Okay. Okay. And so you will try to drill around that, or what would your situation be to follow up on that coarse gold in that core?
Let,
Well,
let me
in
let me jump
Alora,
in a second and just make a comment, Maura. Um, one thing is, and this may be a kind of a blessing, is that we're drilling these holes the first Elora hole that was the 7.5 meters of 14 grams, and then this hole, which is down plunge. So it's about 45 meters on strike and about 30 meters deeper. But the reason is that we're drilling off of a pad that's about 200 meters on surface from this structure. And the reason is that we're drilling off the very corner of our patented claims to get up onto unpatented ground. So consequently, I mean, with the, while we can change the angle of the drill a bit there, by the time we get to the structure, this most recent hole is 165 meters below surface. Probably a deeper hole than we would have drilled if we could have set the rig up close by, right? So very interesting. And through historic drilling, we do know that this does start at or near surface. And so, but we are drilling this deeper out of necessity at this point. And of course, as we go into the later here in the summer program and fall for sure, we'll be able to get up there with permit onto that patented ground. So, or that unpatented
So you're
ground.
reaching out with an angled hole and probably at the end of the hole catching the mineralization. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Which
You kind of
speaks a
always-
lot to the team and their, because we were able to get to the south some holes that vectored up and were shallower, but kind of missed the plunge. They basically missed the plunge, right? Which helped them identify with this deeper hole. And I mean, to be drilling from 200 meters away and vectoring down and hitting the structure is for me pretty amazing. So I just wanted to point that out, and that we're there's a lot of work to do here and 165 meters depth is deeper than anything else that's really been drilled there. And the deepest mine on the Elora vein only went down about 140 meters. So we're hitting higher grade. It appears, again, like Red Lake, that this is getting better as it gets deeper.
Perfect.
I think we're like I'll just explain a little bit about the geology. So with the Elora system, it was drilled in the 80s and 90s, like I said earlier. So the near surface drilling is very, very spotty sampling, even worse than the Manitou core. So we're able to use that to interpret to a point, but it's very challenging to do contoured long section kind of interpretation like we've done on the Big Master too. So we've been able to use our interpretation of the structural controls to test Elora. And yes, it's a little bit deeper, but I actually don't think that makes any difference to what we're doing right now. This step out hole is just down plunge of our interpretation. So what we would do to follow up, we will continue to test the down plunge and infill that to see the strike continuity that we have, how wide this particular shoot is. But what's nice to see is that the controls we've hypothesized and are working on Big Master are the same things that we're seeing on Elora. So because we're in a system of 3 parallel veins, but obviously this isn't quite exactly a vein, but 3 parallel veins, that this is very similar controls. And we're seeing the same plunge orientation on all 3. We really truly believe that it's that main Manitou Norwick deformation zone, and then these more east-west structures that are the D1 are the controlling feature. And what we are looking at in the field, because we're out there as well, we're starting to see that on surface too.
I'm going to break that down for my non-geologist viewers. So the Manitou fault is a deep crustal crack, and these are crucial in orogenic gold systems because they are the conduit that orogenic gold systems have very deep roots. They go down thousands of meters, and they need a path of least resistance for those fluids to make their way up to the surface. But what more than that's a north-south deep crustal crack in the earth. But what Maura is talking about is that you then have secondary faulting that's at an east-west orientation. And not only is that main fault crack important, but these secondary faults are also crucially important. And the intersection of those are important as well. And so it's all about cracks in the earth, folks, when it comes to orogenic gold systems. You need these pathways for the fluids to make their way up towards the surface and then spread out from there. So sorry for interrupting you, Maura, but I
But
gotta
one
bring
other
it
point,
down.
Alan, on that you're making is that it's important to note that these are two different mineralized events. So gold came up first in these east-west structures, actually, and then later in the main deformation, Manitou to Norwich fault zone. So and this is similar to Red Lake and or Timmins Porcupine Fault with the cross structures. Now there it happened the opposite, where the cross structures came in after.
But those
But the
cross-cutting
importance is multiple structures.
and the
Yeah.
cross-cutting is where everything can get juiced up because you got two events there of
It
mineralization.
makes an excellent trap. You
Yeah.
want that complexity. It creates a big hole essentially for the gold to be in. So if you think
But
about
gold
cracks in
came up in
sidewalk or
both.
something, it's going to be there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, Maura, before we kind of delved into this hole, you were starting, I rudely interrupted you. Sorry. And you were starting to talk about some of the other work that you're doing, which let's get into that because I think that's really important in how you're vectoring in on the various different zones, veins, whatever you want to call them.
Well, we really want to make, a new discovery and continue to add and grow to this project. So we're trying to learn as much as possible from these high grade shoots that we know and we're drilling. We actually have exposures of these on surface too. So when I'm talking about the two different orientations of faults, I was out in the field yesterday with one of our field geologists, and we were looking at those in the flesh and seeing how now that we're more in tune to them and we've seen them in the oriented core, we can spot them everywhere, and the controls are kind of coming out more and more. So we're looking for where there'll be other areas that the same sort of geometry is happening, so we can find more high grade shoots, more high grade on the property. So it's pretty exciting, and it really ties all of the work together. We're drilling, so we're learning a ton from the drilling. We're looking at all the outcrops that are available that have showings and understanding how they all fit together. And then something we haven't talked about with you, Allan, is the relogging that we're doing. So we have about 20,000 meters that was drilled by the previous company that they stored in the bush pretty well. So it's not dilapidated, like the boxes are still competent and the core is in order. And we've been packing that back up and bringing it to the new core shack that we have. So, we were only public in January, and we've really been off to the races with understanding the gold controls, setting ourselves up here at a good core shack that I'm sitting in today. And then
They kind of
we'll
did
be able to add that data.
they did a few $1 million worth of work for you that you can utilize. And I think that it's important to also note that they probably were, I don't want to say selectively sampling, but they were careful in what they sent to the lab was what they thought would contain gold in it. But you're learning through your drilling that there's other things to look for that will help. And so you can go back on that couple $1 million worth of core and do some additional work and help you in your endeavors.
Exactly. And it's not uncommon for you to have a theory and you're looking for less for previous operator, they were really looking for vein hosted gold.
Right.
And that's common in orogenic systems, but we know that there's other styles of mineralization here as well. We know you can even have free gold in volcanics. We saw that in Red Lake, and we're starting to see some of that here. So that's pretty exciting. We have a lot of the
Actually,
regional
that's
people
more
look
than
at.
just
We have
that's
go
more
ahead.
than just exciting, Maura. For the gold to get, for the visible gold and the gold to get into that rock outside of what it came up in is suggestive of a very powerful mineralizing system. For it to make its way into that rock beside the zone is super impressive
It really
Well,
shows it's a strong system.
and long lived, that it wasn't just a short event, and probably more than, well, multiple events actually that brought them out.
As Trey mentioned, we
Yeah.
believe from what we've seen so far, and it's not in the literature, but we keep seeing there has to have been gold pulses in all of these different deformation events. So, this is a camp that hasn't seen a lot of research, so we're just learning all the time, but that's what we're seeing evidence of so far.
The
Right.
re-logging program too, Alan, as you mentioned, they certainly weren't looking at the volcanics that we're seeing in the hanging wall and footwall that we know carry. I mean, in the high grade zone there where the big high grade hit was, in the volcanics, the sheared volcanics that make up the hanging wall and footwall, both carried over an ounce of gold in one of our follow-up drilling through there. So there's a lot of potential there, and you're asking about some of these things, and again, I'm speaking to your non-geologist, being a non-geologist, and I'm learning so much here. But another thing that happened over on Elora is that as we drilled further to the south, we didn't see the results that we'd seen to the north. So Anna and Maura went back and they re-logged that core and started to see a real uh, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but anyway, the felsic dikes in there, which is another fracturing, if you will, really seem to be controlling the high grade gold, and now they're really tuning into that, and I think that's going to be very important throughout the camp. And another thing that we're going to see really get out of the relogging is the relogging that these are very obvious, grayer rock, and so being able to map those felsic dikes and tracking to help track down that high grade gold and vector in on it, very important. I mean, I can tell you that from the beginning of telling this story to you, we've always been excited to have Maura and Anna, leading this exploration program because of their experience at
I was
Red
really
Lake.
happy to meet them at the PDAC as well. We had a fantastic conversation.
But what's really exciting now is that the more work we do here, the more this project looks like Red Lake. It's the similarities are, it goes from the geology, both structural and chemical, the geophysics, and we're confirming that through drilling, that and field work. And but the same types of mineralization, having three different types of mineralized ore again, and the fracturing, a lot of the controls from the felsic dikes, it gets more similar to Red Lake the more work we do, and that's one of the things that
Nice
makes this
trend.
last hole so
Very
exciting.
excited.
That's a nice trend. Folks, that's the nature of orogenic gold systems. They have complex structural, they have complex, it's not easy to find them, but if you do, you have a company maker. And that's what it's high grade and low cost. And free cash flow machines. And that's why I like them so much. But you got to figure these things out. And what Maura is talking about there is how they're going about figuring it out.
All the boring work comes together. Trey was talking about the felsic dikes, and in Red Lake, the high grade zone had one of these dikes that had a specific name, the Pinky Dike, and they would follow that, and it was always very closely tied to the very high grade. So, we're looking at that marker as something we can use to trace the competency contrast that creates more openings for gold to come into. So, we're like detectives. It's just a lot of piecing the puzzle pieces together and making sense of it. So we'll keep using that to then find new ones.
Okay, so you brought up my next point, finding the new ones. You're currently doing drilling. What is the strategy behind that drilling? and anything you can share as far as what you're seeing, and how many holes are pending, that sort of stuff. Can you give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, we're kind of right, not quite halfway through the program. We're I think on the third or fourth hole today. We really wanted to follow up more after the first four phases of drilling. We had found some new high grade shoots. We had a lot of questions about, how big could these be? Looking at the historically very sexy high grade of the 53,000 gram per ton hit, when we reinterpreted that zone of Big Master 2, we noticed another high grade shoot made by 3 holes that had been historically drilled. So we're testing around that to see how, if those two possible shoots come together, if they're wider, that sort of thing. So that ties in well with the relogging that we're doing on the Gold Rock camp. We're also following up on the high grade shoot where we had 26 grams per ton over 3 meters, and that was on a new discovery. Our interpretation was that one of these cross structures came through and should create another high grade shoot. And we had some good results there. So it's really following up to see if we can deliver consistent high grade results on our interpretation of the controls. So more testing of what we think is the controls, but so far, I mean, it's looking pretty good so far. So hopefully we have that pinned down. And then the summer work really will help us to get new targets for a fall campaign.
So go ahead.
Yeah, Alan, this, it's such a big property. We're kind of focused on right now. What we're talking about is we've got 50 kilometers of strike on this deformation zone with showings of high grade gold really from the bottom to the top. And either through drilling or channel sampling or ground sampling. And then we also have a very interesting property off on one of the major cross-cutting structures that we call Hinman. And that's a property where last year we did 5 ground samples and 4 of them were over 10 grams per ton. So a couple of the goals here, obviously the relogging, we're doing mapping and we'll do some more sampling, cross-cutting channel sampling at Hinman. Then also we have a property all the way at the south called Sheridan, and we found some of the core there that's being relogged. 10 holes were drilled there. 8 of them had visible gold in it, and again we're spot assayed. So we're going to do some work down there. And again, what we're talking about Elora and Big Master. I mean, we're talking about a 1 kilometer within the Gold Rock camp, which is 20 kilometers within the entire structure, which is 50 kilometers. So one of our kind of unstated goals, and I'll maybe just state it here, is that through the summer program, between the relogging, the groundwork, the mapping and sampling in this initial drill program here, and then of course through with the results of all that, we'll be drilling into the fall, is that we'll start to kind of go that we really have a district play here too, that we really have something going on at Gold Rock. It's very interesting and everything else. But, here 20 kilometers to the south at Sheridan, we have something else that's very interesting. And then here another 30 kilometers off to the east at Hinman, which, oh, by the way, sits right on the Trans-Canada Highway, that we have something else. So from a big picture, big company story, we start to show that, we're focused in here, but we've got a big picture here, that this is a district play with projects, we'll be in a big triangle with these 3. So that's kind of where we want to end up by the end of the year.
All off the highway, like Trey said, one on the Trans-Canada, but the other 2 are off of the 502 highway. So very good logistics.
Okay, so I got to give you guys a couple of tough questions now.
Okay.
Because people accuse me of not asking enough tough questions. One is that, sometimes a project like this can become a science project that's led by geologists that are, trying to look at things and it turns into a science project. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you have to do enough good science to not just get lucky finding gold. We need to be able to scientifically predict it. But most of my career has really been in reserve replacement. Uh, that has been the focus. That was my job, to make sure we could find 500,000 ounces a year to continue to grow the Red Lake mine. So, or at least not kill it. So that's really where I differ from the science nerds, but you want to have the balance. So we have some really strong technical people working with us, but we're led by myself and Anna, who know how important it is to find economic viable gold and how it works being at a mine and operating and mining. So I think there's a good balance there, and you really have to keep that, because you don't want it to turn into a science project. The goal is to continue to find and deliver high grade gold, and we know that's the goal.
Okay.
And I think, Allan, that's, and again, to point out, Maura didn't just work at Red Lake. She ran the program there and was exploration manager with about 90 people working under her. So she really, I mean, that is really company experience. The difference for her would be that, she had a budget from the company, not necessarily, a budget from the market that we're working under now. So, and of course that's my background on the finance side, and kind of ultimately responsible for raising funds to keep the thing going. So it's you have me there, but also both Maura and Anna now very cognizant of that, how difficult the market is and what we need to deliver and what the market is looking for, not what what the other geologists and the technical people are looking for, because let's face it, they're not the ones buying the stock.
Or
They like to follow
funding
it,
the
and
work.
I won't say that in a blanket fashion. I mean, certainly some are, but
Yeah.
you have to, as appeal to the non-geologists, and that's really drill results, and that's one thing that we talked about earlier off the air, but that we started off very strong with the drill program that we even started before the RTO in January. And then by PDAC, we had come out with some great results. But at that point, we were through drilling, and we kind of went through a quiet period here that, and the market seems to think they don't know, they don't look back and say, oh, geez, these guys have only been in business 7 months, really. We're compared to the ones that have been around 7 years. And so, it's what does your last press release say, and when's your next press release coming out? And so, became
Well, Trey, in
obvious
all
to us.
honesty, you kind of got to take credit for you guys came out of the box talking about following the Great Bear model. And, that sets an expectation that, kind of is a pretty big expectation. And, ultimately, do you go that direction? Quite possibly. But when you come out of the gate and you're talking about a Great Bear model, it does create some expectations that are hard to deliver on early in the drilling.
Well, let's talk about the Great Bear model, because I went back and did a deep dive on it, and they were a $10 million market cap company, which is about what we are today. When they
Actually,
first
I
started,
worked for them before they were a $10 million market capitalization.
well,
Came to the company because of me.
they had not even started drilling the Dixie program, the Dixie project, until mid 2018,
Yes.
call it. And they came out with their first results. They raised a few $1 million, and they came up with their first results, which quite frankly were not any better than our first results. They were in a better market, so their stock price went up, and they were able to then raise $10 million and did some more drilling and had a few nice holes. They were kind of basically at that point doing what we were doing. For the first year, they were drilling around the known high grade area,
Well,
where the historic mining and stuff, and it wasn't until the re-logging program in
at the hinge
2019.
zone, Trey, at the hinge zone,
Pardon me?
at the hinge zone, they hit some pretty sweet stuff. some
Well,
good
they did.
intersection.
They did hit late in late 2018. They hit a hole that I think was maybe 12 meters or 15 meters of 44 grams that increased to 66 grams. So that was a pretty sweet hole. Let's
Yeah,
see how the assays come back on this on this hole that we just drilled.
I like the
So
sounds of
but it
that.
really was mid 2019 when they did the relogging of the Newmont core, and they made the discovery of the LP footwall zone.
Yep,
And that was pretty far away, actually, from the hinge and limb zone that they had been drilling.
yep,
And look, from that standpoint, they drilled 80% of the holes they drilled into the LP zone were visible gold. I mean, they couldn't. I mean, it was fantastic. And within 2 years, they were bought out for $1.6 billion.
right.
But the whole thing took 3 years and only 2 years from the time of making the discovery, and kind of spent a full year. So I think I guess the point I'm making is we're still on the Great Bear 2.0 timeline.
And to be knowing what I know about it, because I had Bob Singh come to the company when I was consulting for Great Bear, and I pitched him on the idea of talking to Perry English about looking at his best projects and trying to turn Great Bear into a Red Lake story. I can actually roll it back a little bit further than you. And the reason that they had got that project was because Bob Singh went out there and he looked at all the drill core. So this is what Moore is doing now. So I gave you a little push on the Great Bear 2.0 promotion and marketing, but actually, that's why they got the project. There was a lot of historical drilling. And what Bob did is he went out there and he plotted all the holes, because Bob's very talented at modeling. And he's really serious about integrity of the data that goes into the model. And so he went out there, he looked at the drill core, he looked at the where the reported historical holes were, the angles that were reported, and he started to realize that, hey, some of this data is off. It's not where the holes aren't where they're supposed to be in the model. And as he started to piece it all together, he realized, okay, there's something serious happening here and we need to figure it out. And so the opposite of my push is the similarity to what Maura and her team are doing. They have the benefit of a similar story in that you have this old core that you can then use to help you lead towards discoveries, hopefully like the hinge zone and limb zone. I don't know if a IP type of a or LP type of a discovery is in the cards, because it's somewhat different than the Red Lake stuff. But finding me a hinge and a limb and a Red Lake story will make me a really happy camper. But there is that that foundation of work based on the historical work that is parallel to what Great Bear did. And I know this because I know Bob Singh so well.
Well,
Yeah.
and I got to go to a technical talk about the history of what they did on, step by step. And it was great to hear the same steps we've been taking are the same ones they did before making that discovery. And I think what allowed the LP discovery to be so quick for them was that they had done the foundational work of a model, a regional model, not just a model of the drilled area, but a regional model. And we've done that too with the geophysics, very similarly to what they did, and the seismic data. So we know where the big structures are. We know where there could be, big feeders. So if we get any sniffs between the regional mapping, relogging, we'll be able to put that together and run with it too. So I think that boring stuff is very important, because then it can lead you to a quick understanding, and then you can really run with it from there.
Yeah, it's not boring to me at all because I do know the nature of how these things are found.
And pay
Everybody
off.
thinks you poke a hole and bang, you got the next LP or Hinge Zone or Red Lake Discovery or Fosterville. It doesn't work like that, folks. You need to do this science that sets the foundation for success.
Yeah.
And you're showing that you're doing exactly like Bob Singh did at Great Bear. You're taking all that historical work, you're putting together models, you're drilling, you're finding stuff. I don't think the Great Bear 2.0 story is broken in any way, shape, or form. But people get it. People start having visions
Get
of
excited.
sugar plums in their head when they hear that analogy.
Yeah, and again, as I pointed out earlier, Al, I mean, this is maybe from a timing standpoint and that early work that was done and how quickly it evolved was our Great Bear 2.0. We realized that the geology is different here.
Well, it was different there too.
But fortunately, what we're learning is that the geology is much more like Red Lake. So at one point here we changed the analogy to Red Lake 2.0.
I like the sounds of, actually, it was different there
Even
too.
more.
The LP zone is much different than the hinge and the limb that got them started, financed, and being able to find the LP. But I was really excited about the hinge and the limb because of its similarity to Red Lake. And you find a Red Lake 2.0 and you've probably got more high grade gold that gets mined profitably. I'm gonna anger some of the Great Bear people, but um, I don't know if it's a Red Lake mine yet. Time will tell, but we know what Red Lake was.
Yeah. 30,000 or 30 million ounces is a lot of gold. So Red
At
Lake's
a
pretty
low
crazy.
cost and a high grade that was a free cash flow machine. Um, that's a good 2.0 to look for.
When we're looking eyes wide open for any of the Archean systems, like, there are Hemlo styles, that's a Great Bear. There are a lot, but we know what to look for, and we're certainly not biased towards a certain model type. So we'll see what we find, but so far, lots of very exciting things.
Another fork in the road that I find when I look at orogenic gold systems can go back to what happened at Fosterville and Red Lake. These were both mines that were mined for decades, sort of moderately successful. And the real breakthrough was when they got deeper into the systems. I think at Fosterville, the Swan Zone and the others that are related to that are down about 800 meters. At Red Lake, they went down about 1,000 meters, and that bonanza grade just kept going and going and going. And sometimes I can understand why the Fosterville mine and Red Lake, for that matter, evolved in that fashion, because you can find very high grades, but maybe not the continuity near surface. And so strategically, people can get excited about, hey, let's mine that. It's high grade, we can make money at it. Well, the reality is different. It's thin money to be made in those kind of environments in an orogenic gold system. And so what are your thoughts on how to avoid the early stories in those orogenic gold systems and get to the guts of the system, the bonanza part of the system?
Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. 10 million ounces was the high grade zone itself. The other 20, a lot of that came from Campbell Mine, which made a lot of money. That was the rich families or the poor families that worked in Dickinson. So that was a rich mine. And they followed very high grade chutes until they got to a fold that caps the high grade zone. And then that's the bonanza grade. So you have to have a lot of different types of mineralization, but you should really only mine the best stuff. Like you're gonna have all kinds of other stuff. You gotta stay focused. Where's the prize? And so it's really about being systematic. You can't like love your target so much so you keep drilling a dead duck. You have to just be really strategic about it and smart. So we'll do that. Have the like hindsight of having seen and looked at 50 years of history at a very prolific mine, studied all the different zones. So that's a nice history to have in my back pocket. How we'll look for a really true high grade zone is looking for these kind of cap structures. That's really what creates that amazing zone, the high grade zone in Red Lake. So that's why I have to do all the science foundation, is to see what kind of rock type could be that capping structure that really controls a lot of gold going in one place and being very continuous. So we're certainly looking for that as we look at the
I'm going to
geologic structures.
interrupt you for a second there, Maura. So how you can vision that, folks, is kind of like putting a water hose and pointing it up in the air and then putting a cap on that water hose. And that water hits that, in this case, rock, and spreads out from there. So these stratigraphic horizons of rock are equally as important to this finding of the bonanza grade system of an overall orogenic gold system. Did I get it right, or more?
Yeah, exactly. You need to have that. We create basically the high grade zone's like a carrot. So the top of it was the very, very best, and then it was still great grade down another 1.5 kilometers. So that is what we're looking for. Where
the top of the carrot pays for you to get the rest of the carrot.
Exactly.
Well,
and some of that eater paid to get the kilometer down to find it, right? So, but certainly need to focus on the best stuff, the best zones.
And we have, in this camp, obviously we talk about the great infrastructure with power and highways and access that the forestry has opened up for us. But one other, major asset in the infrastructure in this camp is the Next Gold story to the north, formerly Treasury Metals, that has a 3 million ounce partially permitted PEA level or almost feasibility level low grade mine with the intention of moving towards production. Really, now with Frank Giustra coming on with the Black Wolf and Frank and Sean Kunkin both being involved there now. Of course, they've raised some flow through money and going back and doing some more exploration, looking for higher grade gold than the 1 gram stuff. We have a lot of that near surface, we think. So, to some degree where where you would say, well, this might not be economic to go in and mine this stuff,
alone,
even though it is high grade at surface. Having a low grade project that's and all the highway access to ship ore. The other thing that's important about this near surface, about 86% of it is free gold that we're seeing. So, in some of the test metallurgical work, 87% came out from gravity. So you've got, and then 99% with a little cyanide added. So, again, we don't know where this goes, but we always say that kind of the downside for Dryden is that we put together a few million ounces of high grade gold and that makes that project of Next Gold's very attractive. If we have near surface open pittable 5 gram kind of material, that gives us an alternative to mining as opposed to having to put something together and build.
Well, if you're going to bring that up, then
ourselves.
I have to bring up that, I think everybody's been watching you guys for your potential to find that juicy orogenic gold system. And you just brought up a couple of different numbers there, Trey. Next Gold, or I think that's their name, formerly
Mhm.
Treasury Metals, that has brought Frank Giustra in. That's about a 1 gramish or less kind of a
Yeah,
system.
1 gram.
And then you threw out 5 grams in an open pit type scenario. What made you throw that number around? Because that is an order of magnitude about 10 times the grade of a lot of open pit mines these days. What made you throw in 5 grams?
So the
So
average grade for mining at Gold Rock was 5 grams on the Big Master system and was
Was
14
that
on the Allan
underground or
system.
was that at surface?
It was underground, but very, very shallow. So we're hoping with the robust sampling, looking at all of the halo mineralization, that you could get something that's at surface, small kind of open pit operation at 5 grams. That's kind of our vision of what it could be. Now, time will tell if that's true, but that's our theoretical. If you could look at the zones we have, you could have like a 5 gram kind of small open pit scenario. Certainly, we think there's a lot more in higher grades if you were to just mine the veins, but that's kind of what where Trey got that number from. And even if you look at Next Gold's project, if you look at Goldland and you look at just the vein, that is about 5 grams. When you start to try to take it all in an open pit and get all those other secondary zones, it goes down to 1 gram. So
Okay.
we're looking at a camp where there's a whole lot of different styles. If we start talking about what Next Gold has, they have the granitoid intrusion kind of zones. We might have some of those on our property, and they have the VMS style at Goliath. So then you start thinking, hey, is this a Timmins camp where there's a whole lot of different styles of deposits? Because who knows how big this Dryden camp can be. It has barely been explored, and we're just starting, really. So
Especially on your ground. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
also,
interesting.
Allan, on the previous operator, they did do a small mining project. In fact, one of our directors did that work for them. And it was right above the Big Master 2 vein, along the vein structure. It was 5 blast holes that they did and mucked out, and it came out at about 5 grams.
5 grams.
And that's also the material that the metallurgical work that I talked about was done on. So it's not just the pilot mining that was done there.
And what was
And
the
again,
grade?
we're not saying
5 grams.
that we've got a 5 grams of open pitable material, but
That's a hope.
that's yeah, it's not unreasonable either
It could be there.
that it could be done. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we're
And
hoping.
so, so, sorry, my dogs are barking. I hope you can't hear them in my microphone. Your focus is, of course, on more about the Red Lake 2.0 type of a target than an open pit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking for the high grade. That's always been our focus. And we think we can add a lot of value for our shareholders and the region with that.
And Trey mentioned something that I want to close on, which is what's happening around you. Frank Giustra's in the area. Zach Flood's in the area. Things are starting to heat up a lot in Red Lake or in Dryden. Sorry.
Well, yeah, when we first started putting this property package together, really early 2022, we kind of had our choice. I mean, Treasury Metals had their project up to the north, and then they had done the deal for Goldland with First Mining, which is even further to the north. But we had it's been nobody else really interested in the area so much. So the fact that Frank's come into the Treasury Metal thing has really given that some legs. There's no longer a question if they can get financing. And then having Kenorland come in and take the property to the east of us, and they actually border us for quite a bit. They've done some staking to beyond what they optioned there. And a bit out of character for Zach, for them to come in and actually option property and pay, hard dollars for a property there. We looked at that, and of course, it's a little bit, but we have better access on our property, and there were some other reasons we didn't pick that up. I mean, some of the stuff right adjoining them, where they're contiguous to us, we might have liked that if we could have split it apart, but that wasn't possible. But having them there and working with them now on the groundwork and stuff, I think it's going to be very beneficial. And of course, Zach, they just
Zach
got
is a really brilliant guy and does serious science work. I started following his company because of their Fratet discovery of cluster of epithermal veins. And there's a lot of similarities to how you tackle an epithermal vein system as to an orogenic. You're looking for that high grade, and in veins or zones that are steeply dipping. And so there's a lot of similarities there. And I find it really intriguing that Zach's got into the area, because I have a lot of good things to say about Zach.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
So in a nutshell, going forward, you got assays pending, more holes pending, the relogging of the historical hole, modeling, understanding the structures, the cross-cutting, the stratigraphy. You got a lot of stuff on the horizon, Maura.
Very busy. Yeah, lots of moving parts here, and we've got a very busy core shack right now.
Well, as I started out, I love orogenic gold systems, and I love the high grade nature of them, and that if you find one, you've got a company maker, because they're free cash flow machines. So, and this is. I did a bit of a Freudian slip there earlier when I talked about Dryden, and I said Red Lake instead of Dryden. I think in my mind was telling me something there accidentally in that Freudian slip, that there is a lot of potential that Dryden could be similar to Red Lake in a lot of ways.
That's certainly what we're finding. The more work we do, the more similarities we see. And like I said, we're so fortunate to have Maura and Anna that spent so much time there and see these things. And while as Maura said, they're certainly not hung up, and that this has to, it looked like this here, so it's got there, so it's got to look like this here. Certainly wide open to everything, but so far, I mean, it's like they're testing theories that are based on their experience in Red Lake, and those theories are proving to be true. So
well, and I really appreciated Maura. Sometimes I push Maura just to see the reaction, and I threw that science project stuff out there, and I really am impressed that you realize, like you did at Gold Corp, it's about finding what you can mine. It's not about a science project that you're trying to impress other geologists with your science. You have clearly in your mind from your experience at Gold Corp that this is about finding mineable stuff.
Yeah, it has to be mineable, and I bring in the smart people for the science experiment part and keep them on track. So you have to work with great people, and I've been lucky to find some excellent different skills out there, and I have a great network. So lucky that way.
And Trey is always really good about pointing out that your history you and Anna, your history of how you found replacement ore for what was mined out, and that experience with geochemistry and geology, structures, stratigraphy, folding, all of this you're bringing to a really small company like Dryden Gold, And so you're kind of going at it like a gold corp would in a Dryden Gold.
Yeah.
Well,
We hope
that's
that will get the interest, sorry, of a strategic partner in the hopefully near future. But that's certainly something when we talk to bigger companies that they seem impressed with and are happy to see. Sorry, Trey, go ahead.
Did I miss
well. I'm
anything,
just going to
Trey?
say that this you know that we are limited by the market in here. I'm just really kind of following up on your question about finding the roots and this at depth. Drilling deep holes gets more and more expensive. So here through the first drill programs, we've concentrated on more expanding the footprint and looking for more high grade zones starting at surface, and then so far been successful at Elora at following that down to depths not explored before. But we really, if of course, if the market were better and our stock price would reflect, I think, more our results that we've been showing, we'd be able to raise the kind of funds to do that deep drilling. In the meantime, I think we just have to work our way down and certainly hoping for a better market in the future
Well,
to make those exploration dollars come a little easier, because right
well,
now it's
in that
not
regard,
easy.
if you got 4,000 meters, you can drill 10 400-meter holes, or you can drill 20 100-meter holes. My math is off. 40 100-meter holes.
Yeah.
And so what's the difference? If you can find something you can chase down to 400 meters, or poking a bunch of holes within 100 meters?
Well, it's a balance. We want to show that their things are growing at depth, but we do want to add bulk to this and have more shoots, and we can test those at surface because we are seeing mineralization starting at surface. It's even outcropping on surface. So I think that's an opportunity that we're lucky to have because, as Trey mentioned, bad market, harder to raise funds. We want to really make every exploration dollar count for as much as possible. And because they're stacked structures, if we can drill two structures in the same hole, we're trying to do that. So just being as smart as possible with the drill dollars.
Cool.
The other thing, Allan, is that in this initial program with testing, when we talk about expanding the footprint, okay, and we've got a great map in the presentation now that shows. So went from the known high grade zone with the 53,000 gram hit there, and they followed the cross structure from Big Master 2, where on that known high grade zone, across to Big Master 1, and successfully with one hole hit 3 meters of 26 grams on a separate vein structure there. Now that same structure runs all the way over to Elora, and we're very excited to test that. It's just a little it's up to the north a bit, and we can't get there till we get the permit. But then they also went, and there was another cross structure where we hit the high grade there on Elora, followed that back across to the Big Master 1 and Big Master 2, which would be 400 meters south of the known high grade zone, and hit yet another high grade zone down there on Big Master 2. So a lot of this expanding the footprint is also at the same time proving their theories on these cross structures and following them, and now of course also with the following of the felsic dikes and stuff. So it there's more to it in the early part of this, as far as proving that these cross structures really are the controls and important, and that we know how to find more gold, high grade gold on the property.
Sounds great to me. Why don't you got any closing comments from either of you, and before I close it off?
No, it's been great. We've covered lots. I appreciate it.
Ah, great. I always love talking about rocks with you, Maura.
Same, Allan. Lots of fun.
Yeah, you betcha. Okay, so there you go, folks. I love high-grade orogenic gold systems. Red Lake is one of those. A lot of geological similarities to Dryden. Dryden Gold was kind of a first mover in a big way into this area. Historically, there had been stuff, but in modern times, let's say over the last 5 years or so, and focused on a key structure and are looking at the cross structures in that system. But now the area has attracted Frank Giustra. To the north of them, they're looking at an open pit type mine. And then Zach Flood from Kenorland, who I have a high regard for, has also made a big significant. I got a question for you before I finish my close, Maura. Has he joint ventured that out yet, or is he's a prospect generator? So has he joint ventured that out, or are they keeping it so
No,
far?
they're keeping it. They did an option agreement on it, so they've been working pretty aggressively on that project already. Seeing their trucks in town with samples. So
Okay, so now I got some more ammunition for my close. Prospect generators generally farm those projects out to somebody else. I used to have a good friend of mine, Andre Goumond, from the fame of Virginia, on my shows, and I interviewed them lots, talked about his company lots, and they were a prospect generator too, until they found a project that they didn't want to joint venture out, and that led to the success of Virginia Gold, who actually had 3 successes under Andre's direction. They spun out when Eleanor was bought out. They spun out assets, that was bought out. Then they spun out assets, and that was bought out. And so this is an interesting situation when a prospect generator, I don't know if they're going to keep it to themselves, but if Zach Flood keeps that project to himself, I'll be even more impressed, because I've known Zach for some time now. He does fantastic geological work, has a tremendous team with him, a great business model. And so you've got Dryden making a first run into the area. Then you've got Frank Giustra moving in recently, and Zach Flood moving in recently. And, you know, folks, this doesn't happen because for the fun of it. It happens in, highly prospective regions. Dryden Gold is a major player in that region. They're doing a lot of work. They got a lot of drilling that they're going to do. They've got benefit of past drilling that they can learn from. And they got a great team with Maura that, as we talked about, they know that this isn't about a science project trying to impress other scientists, geoscientists. They were focused in Red Lake on replacing ore that was being mined out with new discoveries that they made. And so she clearly understands the importance of looking for something that can be mined. Whether it turns into that or not, it still remains to be seen, but I'm really impressed with the land package they picked up in the region that they're in, and the work that they're doing, and what they're seeing in the drilling, the minimal drilling so far. So stay tuned for more. Do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, and we'll talk to you soon.